Stand together and worship Jesus. Let me hear your voices this morning, church. He's coming on the clouds. Sing it out. He's coming on the clouds. Kings and kingdoms will bow down. And every chain will break. His broken hearts declare his praise. For who can stop the Lord Almighty? Sing it. Our God is the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fire. tongue confess. Who can stop? Who can stop the Lord Almighty? 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 Oh, who can stop the Lord Almighty? Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Oh, there is no one. Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Who can stop the Lord? Sing it. Our God is the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting our battles. And every knee will bow before Him. Our God is the Lamb that was slain for the sin of the world. His blood breaks the chain, and every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Every knee will bow before Him.
Good morning. I'm Kyle Henderson. I'm pastor here at First Baptist Church. We're glad that you're here today. If I could draw your attention to the seat back in front of you to some cards that are there. If you're our guest, we'd love it if you'd find the blue card and fill out the information there, which would give us a chance to contact you and thank you for being here in our service. You can take that card and you can drop it in one of the offering baskets, which are at the back and here at the front. There's also an orange-colored terracotta card, which lets you put down a prayer request. If you have something that you're praying about and you'd like us to pray with you about it, you could fill that card out and put it in one of the offering baskets. There's a green card that tells you how you could join our church. We'd love to have you come be a part of our fellowship. And there's an offering envelope to help facilitate giving. If you want to give cash, you can put it in there. If you want to give online, we can help facilitate that for you. As guests, we're not expecting you to give at all, but our members give because they love our church. If you look at the handout that you're given, there's several announcements there that are really important. The top one is about our float in the Christmas parade. We're the last float in the Christmas parade for the churches that cooperate together. We have about 10 of our churches telling the story of the Nativity. We call it Christmas in the Parade, and we're the John 3:16 float, which has never been this float before, which is God so loved the world. And so we want everybody to get that message that Christmas is about God loving you. And so the people walking the parade, we're encouraging you to buy one of these shirts for $5. You have to go online, use the QR code, sign up, get a size, and we'll get you a shirt for them. And it just says loved, period. Right? The period is important. Right? I'm loved, period. Like nothing mattered, nothing else, nothing you do, you are completely loved. That's what Christmas means. We want to make sure everybody hears that. We also need people to walk with the float. We need people on the float. People walking in the parade will be handing out invitations to North Pole and a message about the love of God for everybody that we can touch with one of these hands out. So you're like, I don't know a lost people. I don't know how to tell people about Jesus. This is the lowest level, simplest way, super positive. There's a piece of candy on the handout. Everybody wants one, and they can learn about the love of God. And you could become like a street evangelist with us by just walking in the street and handing things out. Super simple. Or you can be on the float, and we're going to have all the Christmas characters on the float, and they're going to be all holding signs about the love of God. So it's going to be a great experience. The second one down is about North Pole. We're looking for volunteers, and we're looking for people to attend. We're looking for you to invite people. We have some posters that are out in the lobby you could put up if you have a place. We're putting a poster up and people will see it. Maybe you got one in the mail. Did any of you get your postcard in the mail? Anybody? Some of you got your postcard in mail. If you didn't get it in the mail, it's maybe because you haven't looked at your mailbox. So go get your mail and see if you got it in there. So they should be coming out to all of our community over the next couple of days, inviting people in. So invite people. The QR code will take you to the mail out so that you can see that information about what's going on. And there's a video there about the North Pole. The bottom one is for our choir, all community choir, the Gloria of Vivaldi. So it's a very famous, in fact, they tell me, right? I didn't know this. It's the most famous choral orchestra Christmas music. Like, it's a really famous piece of music. It was lost to history until the 1930s. Lost for a couple of hundred years. A guy finds it, and now people all over the world are celebrating it. So it might not be common to you, but it might be a great thing for you to come. Super interesting music. Lots of people working really hard. You could get tickets by using the QR code there. On the inside, I write a Bible study every week for my sermon. This one has a QR code, so this is first for me. But it links you to an amazing article by one of the most important interpreters of the story of the prodigal son. And if this is my moment to try to get you to look at it, I'd love for you to read this article. Kenneth Bailey lived in the Middle East, an amazing scholar, and it would inspire you and teach you. All right, I'm going to get you to get up and greet each other. It's Thanksgiving week, and so the answer to the question of the day is, what's your favorite Thanksgiving food? Now, I got a caveat, because people in the first service, they were cheating, completely cheating. Like, I mean by that, a food that's really only available at Thanksgiving. So somebody said ice cream. I was like, that's not what I'm talking about. Thanksgiving specific food, what's your favorite? All right, greet each other in the name of the Lord. So we're in a sermon series about the fruit of the Spirit. We've been in it all year looking at the different fruit of the Spirit and how those fruit were evident in the life and ministry of Jesus, and how, if they become evident in our lives, how that might change us in the world. And the way that that happens is we invest more in the seed time, that we invest more in learning and listening to the life and the way of Jesus, so that what will happen is he will produce his fruit in us. And while we talk about the fruit as individual things, the Bible tells us there's just one fruit. And the fruit is the fruit of the life of Jesus born out in us. But the emphasis that we're talking about through these three sermons is the idea of gentleness. And the poster up here that we have of gentleness uses peaches, and peaches is a terrible fruit to be gentleness. Because this peach kind of gentleness is the wrong idea about gentleness. That is, that it's very soft and easily bruised. But the Bible says that gentleness is a powerful idea of controlling yourself. And the poles that it's talking about is between excessive anger and no anger at all. So when you see something happening in the world, maybe something that's wrong, you could be tempted to excessive anger, criticism, bitterness, attacking, pushing people away, or you could be tempted to excessive permissiveness as if it didn't matter what people do at all. But gentleness is standing in the middle of that and living a life in control of yourself. Not caring, but not overly caring in a way that is hurtful to other people. And so I've been trying to help us think about what that might look like. And so 2 weeks ago, we talked about a sermon in which I said lions are a good example of what I'm talking about in this moment, which is lots of power. Maybe the cub has wandered off, but she doesn't use her mouth to kill the cub, but to pick the cub up and very tenderly bring the cub where she needs the cub to be, right? So gentleness is power under control. Last week in my sermon, I told a story about the lost sheep, the 99 sheep that are home, and one wanders away. And maybe you've had some animal wander away, and you're frustrated and angry, and by the time you get there, you want to yell at the animal, you want to yell at the kid, you want to yell at the person, right? That's the way that, and I was telling the story about this sheep that was found in a ranch, it had been lost on the backside of this ranch, in New Zealand, I think I said Australia in the early service, it's New Zealand. In New Zealand, and lost for 3 years. And so when it kind of got found, it's like just weighted down by all of this and can't see, and they ended up shearing, cutting it, 75 pounds lifted off of this animal. I was like, this is fantastic. I was gently accosted after the service by several people who wanted to know what the sheep look like afterwards. And so I'm just responding to the people that wanted to know what Barack looked like afterwards. It's just like all that lifted off of you. And when you look at that, it's like, oh yeah, you could be mad because the sheep was lost, mad because of how much trouble it was. You could be mad about it, or you could look at this and say, oh, isn't restoration better than mad? Power under control, that's gentleness. He was rescued by a group called Edgar's Mission, which is to be kind to animals, this rescue group. And they're trying to help people out. It's like that's the sense of it. Like take your power and help with it. Now, the story we're going to look at today, the last of these 3 stories, is the story of the prodigal son. There's a father who's been wronged. You could see easy excessive anger. There's a father who's been wronged. You could see maybe a permissive parent who doesn't do anything about it. How do you stand in gentleness in the middle of this story?
watch this morning. Instead of reading the scripture, we're going to actually watch it this morning. So let's check this out.
And he said, there was a man who had 2 sons. And the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of property that is coming to me. And he divided his property between them. Not many days later, the younger son gathered all he had and took a journey into a far country, and there he squandered his property in reckless living. And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in that country, and he began to be in need. So he went out and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his fields to feed pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, How many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion, and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Bring quickly the best robe, and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand, and shoes on his feet. And bring the fattened calf, and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this my son was dead, and is alive again. He was lost, and is found. And they began to celebrate. Now his older son was in the field, and as he came and drew near to the house, he heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said to him, Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fattened calf, because he has received him back safe and sound. But he was angry and refused to go in. His father came out and entreated him. But he answered his father, Look, these many years I have served you, and I never disobeyed your command. Yet you never gave me a young goat that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fattened calf for him. And he said to him, Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. It was fitting to celebrate and be glad, for this your brother was dead and is alive. He was lost and is found.
It might seem crazy what I'm about to say. Sunshine, she's here. You can take a break.
What are you doing? What are you doing out here? The party's in there. My son, he came home. Why won't you come to the party? Yes, I know it was your brother. I remember what it was like the day he came. And he came for my property. He wanted me dead. But he's in there. If you just come home, you'll see. I wish you could have been here earlier today. I get up every day and I look for him. You know how I do that. And then I saw someone walking, and you know the way he kicks his right foot out? I thought it couldn't possibly be him, because I remember how he left. I thought he would never come home. How I split the property up between you and him, and he took it away. And when I saw him, I could tell things had gone bad. He looked beaten down and disheveled, and his clothes had all fallen apart. But you could come see, he's right inside. If you just come home, he's right there. I know it's his fault. I know what he did was wrong. I know. He's paid the penalty. Just come, you'll see. If you just come home, he's right in there. And you can come to the party too. You don't have to stay out here. He's just in there. Oh, when he came home, I ran up to him. He thought for sure I was gonna slay him. He thought for sure I was gonna beat him down. And when I hugged him, you could see him just melt in tears. And it smelled like pigs. It's awful. It's gonna take a lot of cleaning to get that off of him. And so when you get in there, just don't say anything about the pigs, okay? But he's just in there. And you'll recognize him, and he looks different. He's not all puffed up. He's humble. He wanted to come home. He's been asking about you. Why don't you come into the party? He's just in there. Come home. I know you're the one that's been here. I know that you've been obedient. I know. But he's my son, and he was dead, and now he's alive. Would you come? Would you just come into the party? He's right there. When he came home, and I held him, and I smelled his head. It was like he was a little boy again after he'd been out in the fields all day and smelled like hay and dirt. He's my son. You're my son too. Could you come to the family reunion? He's just in there. Would you come? Why out here when you can be there? The story of the prodigal son is a story told for a group of people. It's told, we're instructed, to a group of people who continually stand outside judging the people that are invited to the party of God. Logan, if you can get me control. There we go. So the son in the story goes away. And we meet the son in his living and losing everything that he had. And then we see him in the pigsty. And then we see him on the road. And that's the part of the story that we love. But the story ends outside the door of the home, with the father pleading for the older brother to come inside. In Luke chapter 15, Jesus has told a series of stories about lost things and the parties that are celebrated when lost things are found. He ends the whole set of the stories by saying, we had to celebrate, meaning we, the new community that God wants to build, in which everybody belongs, sinner and saint, the good and the bad, the people that are easy to love and the people that are hard to love. He said everybody belongs in the celebration of the kingdom of God. We all have to come. But that's not what was happening. Because the people that had assigned themselves the duty to protect the kingdom of God. The Pharisees and the teachers of the law, they were constantly looking at what Jesus was doing and saying, that community that you're talking about, in which everybody belongs, we don't want any part of that community. Because we see that you're hanging out with tax collectors and sinners, about the worst words they could use about somebody. These people don't belong to God. We know we'll stand out here and be able to point out to you the people that don't belong at the party of God's kingdom. And it says the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, they muttered. And muttering, that's that talk you do to yourself. It's what's in your mind. It's what's in your heart about other people. They were mutterers. And it was the story that they were telling themselves. These people that don't look like me, that don't act like me, don't belong to God. And I need to make sure whatever I do, that I keep those dirty people far away from me. So Jesus tells a series of stories to try to get people to think new about what's going on. He tells the story of a shepherd who has 100 sheep, and one gets lost, and he goes out and finds that one sheep. And he tells the story about a woman, a poor, impoverished woman who doesn't have hardly any money, and she loses some of her money. She knows it's in the house somewhere, and she turns the house upside down trying to find the money, and she finds the money. And then he tells the story about a dad who's got a son who gets lost, and he comes home and he's found. And then he tacks on the last story. The older brother who's standing in the street who refuses to come into the party. And I think Jesus is maybe most concerned that you're that person in the story. You're the person standing outside, looking at what's going on in God's kingdom and saying, that's not for me. And I just want to ask you 3 simple questions from the story in your life. Would you have celebrated? Would you be one of the ones that went into the party, or would you have stood outside the party? Jesus says it over and over in these stories. When the guy finds his sheep, he says, everybody, come rejoice with me. I found my lost sheep. Everybody comes and says, isn't it amazing you found your sheep? The woman finds her coin. She's so overcome. She throws a party, probably spends all of that money throwing the party for the money that she found, and she says to everybody, rejoice with me, I have found my lost coin. So that when the father in the story says, bring the fatted calf and kill it, let's have a feast and celebrate, because my son came home. You're supposed to hear the invitation over and over again to come to the party that God has in store in the kingdom that he's building, that we must come to celebrate and be glad. Now, the reason the people were standing out in the street with their arms folded and tapping their foot was because those people in the party had been bad. I mean, they had done bad things. This son had done a bad thing. He'd taken all this money and wasted it all, and it's just lost due to his lifestyle choices, his selfishness. He'd done bad things. The sinners, I mean, they'd done bad things. We meet all these characters in the Bible. We know, right? They've done stuff. But the people on the outside were looking at them and saying, because they've done bad things, they are not welcome in God's kingdom. And Jesus says, that's not the kingdom I'm building. In 1 Corinthians, Paul, he's helped to build a church in Corinth, a really complicated town. And he's talking about the people that are in the church. Now, most of us would want it to read, it says, well, who's in the church, man? You've got the mayor, and you've got the city council people, and you've got the most influential, and you've got all the, snazzy businessmen and all the really well-dressed people, because that's kind of what we think that would be fantastic. But Paul, when he says, here's who's in the Church of Corinth, he says, neither the sexually immoral, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor men who have sex with men, nor thieves, nor the greedy, nor drunkards, nor slanderers, nor swindlers will inherit the kingdom of God. And that is what some of you were. The long list of the things that we would say disqualifies a person from being embraced in the arms of God. Paul says, that's who you were. See, the Pharisees and the tax collectors are standing outside saying, that's not me. That's not for me, because I haven't done anything bad. And they lived a life of self-righteous justification in the clear evidence of sin in their life, and so they stayed outside. But there's joy in seeing a person return, and there's pain and seeing them outside the door. The older brother's standing outside, and inside's that party, and everybody in the party is celebrating and filled with joy and filled with love and filled with community, and he stands outside isolated and alone and bitter because he won't go into the party. It's Thanksgiving week, and I hope for you, Thanksgiving week is just an outrageously amazing, fun week. I hope it's for you a time when maybe your family is getting together and you're going to be filled with lovely food and everything. But Thanksgiving week for some people is really, really, really a hard week. There's a Facebook group called Prayer for Prodigals. Thousands of people are members of this group because they're coming to Thanksgiving with broken hearts, because around their Thanksgiving table, there's going to be empty seats because of broken relationships and people that won't come to the party. Because sometimes their pride has gotten a hold of them, and long ago, family bitterness has just become a stone, a rock in their hearts, and they're not able to get past it and to get over it and come to the table. And so they're coming, and it's Thanksgiving week, and they're just praying somehow, God, could you bring them in out of the street, because you can be a prodigal and be moral. You can be a prodigal and be puffed up. It's hard sometimes to get through the holidays when you've got somebody like this in your life. We celebrated Thanksgiving with my extended family, my brother's children. They come to us for Thanksgiving. And because we're doing something different for Thanksgiving the rest of this week, we held Thanksgiving yesterday. And so we're sitting around the table, and my brother, who just retired to Kaufman, and his wife came, and they brought her aunt. And so we met somebody new at Thanksgiving, and that was so lovely. But one of our chairs was empty. Somebody who celebrated Thanksgiving with us for a decade, related to one of these family that came, and they've got a broken relationship, and so he didn't come. And we were so sad. Like, that's what it's like to stay outside and to not come in, and decide it's better to be separate than it is to be in the party. Jesus really wants to know from the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, he wants to know, how are you going to treat God's children? Are you going to embrace them or thrash them? In all three of these stories, the shepherd goes after this lost sheep. Maybe he's mad as a dickens because this sheep keeps wandering off. Yesterday, I went outside. I was getting ready to cook turkeys, and I opened the garage door, and Sweetie Belle is out in my driveway. Now, Sweetie Belle is my nephew's dog, and Sweetie Belle had been put in the backyard, but Sweetie Belle is smaller than my dogs, and so the holes that my dogs stick their heads through to bark at me when I come home was big enough for Sweetie Belle to get out. right? So Sweetie Belle just is out. She's wandering around in my driveway, thinking about leaving, wandering over there. She doesn't see very well or hear very well anymore. And Sweetie Belle's out there. And I'm like, whoa, 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 Sweetie Belle, right? Come. I'm yelling, Sweetie Belle, right? I'm trying not to scare her, but to get her attention. I'm running after Sweetie Belle to get Sweetie Belle to come on in. Sweetie Belle follows me in, right? A lost animal, you can be angry at him, or you can go rescue him. Jesus wants to know from the Pharisees and the tax collectors. He wants to know from you, are you going to love his wounded people? Pharisees and tax collectors, they're standing, the Pharisees and the teachers are standing outside. Jesus puts into the words of the older brother this outrageous claim. When this son of yours who has squandered your property with prostitutes comes home, you kill the fatted calf for him. Now, the story's clearly told us that we don't know where the son's been. He's been a long way away. The older brother's been out in the field. He doesn't know anything. He hasn't seen anything. He has no idea. The only reason you would make this kind of allegation against someone is if you wanted them to get in big trouble. Because this is the kind of thing that you could say to someone that would get them stoned to death, to get him beat up in your community. And so he uses the harshest language available to him. See, the Pharisees and the teachers of the law looked at people and had harshness for them, but Jesus has something else for them. And even in the way we tell the story, like in the video, you saw him in the far country, how he's acting, and he's up to no good, right? There's women around the table, and there's a lot of drinking going on. And what we have done is we've turned this story into a morality tale about being sober and not, fooling around. Like somehow that's the heart of it, because we use these words wild living, and then we insert all that morality. Now, what's really interesting about the language here, the Greek words here have nothing to do with morality. They're not moral words. They're economic words. They have to do with the way you think about your property. They have to do with thinking about the way the world is, or economic and philosophical words. Here are a bunch of other better translations for this word. Wasteful living is just pouring money down a hole. Senseless behavior. You're out of your mind. Why would you be spending money like that? To live without thinking. To live without being concerned. A tendency to destroy your own means of subsistence. Foolish spending. We tend to use translations to shield ourselves from the implication of Jesus' words, because it is way easier to confront this story if we don't have to see that we are the prodigal. It's way easier if we don't have to see that this is our problem too. And maybe I think the simplest translation that it's helpful is that he squandered his wealth in selfish living. And all of us can see ourselves in those words. When you take your money, your talents, your energy, and you just spend it all for yourself, to the detriment of the community and the people around you. This young son, he took his part that was meant to sustain a whole family. He took it away from that family. He went and threw it all away somewhere else, and he imperiled his whole community and everybody that was around him because he was so selfish. Now, if you have to think about selfishness, now that's something that each of us might have to confront. Because we kind of like the world our way, and we kind of like everybody to do what we want them to do, and God's calling you to a different way of living, and you got to come out of the far country of selfishness, and you've got to slay the me in you. You got to slay that central idolatrous focus on yourself. And when you can see yourself in the younger son, when you can see that you're broken, then you can't stay out in the street with the older brother. You got to say, look, I'm going in there because those are my people, because I'm one of the trash heap people that he rescued. I'm going in there. I'm not standing out here with you trying to act like I didn't do anything wrong. I'm going in there because I know I did. Because there's joy in seeing yourself as the lost one. And there is pain seeing yourself outside the door. And Jesus just really wants to know. What he was asking the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, all he was asking them is, will you humble yourselves? Will you just open your eyes and see my children? Will you just come and celebrate when somebody comes from being far away from God to being close to God? Won't you come into the party? He was saying to them all. In the far country, the young son is in the pig pen. He's there in the pig pen. He's looking around and saying, this is terrible. He says to himself, I'm going to go home. I'm going to say to my dad, I have sinned against heaven and against you, and I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. Just camp on that yellow for just a moment there. He's not ready yet to meet his father. Because at this moment, he's got a plan. I'm going to go home. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to work my job. I'm going to pay him back. I'll show him that I'm a success. I'll show him that it wasn't a waste. I'll do it through my own power. I'm going to fix myself up, and then we can talk. I'm going to go get a job. Some of you are on that pathway, the pathway of self-righteousness. I can fix myself. I can be good. I can do good. And God's saying to you, that is never going to work. Until you see yourself in the lost son, until you come into the party and say, I belong with the destitute, with the sinners, with the depraved, until I see myself in there, you're never going to make it. When the father sees him on the road and he runs to him and he embraces him and the son falls to his knees, the son says this, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. And that's it. I got nothing. I can't do anything. I'm desperate. And I'm done. Because God's not on a self-reclamation project trying to get you to be better or fix yourself up. He's trying to get you on your knees and to see that you're like everybody else and to deal with the real ugliness of sin and the incredible grace of Jesus. Because he says there's joy in seeking grace, and there is pain in ignoring your need. Why are you standing out in the street when you can come into the party?
Celebrate the Lord's Supper. But before we do that, we just want to reflect on this. And this is a hymn that I've known for a long time. You'll probably recognize it. I think it speaks for itself. Softly and tenderly, Jesus is calling for you and for me. See on the portals, he's waiting and watching for you and for me. Come home, come home. You are weary, come home. Earnestly, tenderly, Jesus is calling.
is pleading, pleading for you and for me. Why should we linger and heed not his mercies? Mercies for you and for me. Come home, come home, ye who are weary, come home. Earnestly, tenderly, Jesus is calling, calling, oh sinner, come home.
If you come on forward. And while they're coming forward, let me give you a couple of pieces of instruction. You're going to leave out that direction. In this section, you're going to leave out that direction. In that section, you're going to leave out that direction. Somebody's going to put hand sanitizer on you. They're going to come forward. You're going to tear off a piece of bread. You dip it in the cup. Then you eat it right there. If you need gluten-free, it's over here. And if you want to do the self-contained cups, they're also over there. And you're welcome to do it that way. So Jesus is there telling this story about a party and a meal that was being served. And Jesus has a meal also in store for us all one day. One day in the kingdom of heaven, we'll all be at the wedding feast of the Lamb. We'll be there with Jesus. And he's given us a little meal that we can celebrate over and over and over again, reminding us of the party that we're invited to. And so when you come today, you come to the party of the grace of God. And when you come forward saying, God, I need grace. I don't come up here because I deserve it. I come because I need it. And you leave filled with the presence of God. So would you come celebrate the party of God?
Time now is fleeting, the moments they're passing from you and from me. Shadows are gathering, deathbeds are coming for you and for me. Come home, come home, ye who are weary, come home. Earnestly, tenderly, Jesus is calling, calling, oh sinner, come home. Softly and tenderly, Jesus is calling, calling for you and for me. See on the portals, he's waiting, he's watching, watching for you and for me. Come home, come home, ye who are weary, come home. calling, calling, oh sinner, come home.
Let's stand and sing this.
Come home, come home, ye who are weary, come home, earnestly, tenderly, Jesus is calling, calling, oh sinner, come home.
I hope you have a great week and it's full of Thanksgiving. I hope you'll be filled with prayer this week for people for whom this is a rough week. And maybe there might be room in your life for somebody that might be alone this season, that you might encourage them and remind them that they belong to God's family this week. Any other words to be spoken before we go? We'll be dismissed as we say our motto. Would you say it with me? Love God, live like Jesus, serve others. Let's go.